Hi, and welcome back to Munamind, where we dive deep into topics that actually matter for children's futures. Today, I'm tackling something a little bit different to my previous content, and that honestly keeps me up at night as someone who advocates for children's rights. And that's how recent changes to diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in schools might be affecting some of our most vulnerable students. Now, before anyone clicks away thinking this is going to be a political rant, it's not. I'm not here to debate the politics of DEI. I'm not even really an American citizen, so my voice wouldn't count. I'm here because I care about kids, especially kids who need extra support. And I've been seeing some concerning patterns that I think we need to talk about as parents, educators, and advocates. I'll be completely honest with you, this is probably the most challenging topic I've ever covered on this channel because it sits at the intersection of policy, politics, and children welfare. But here's the thing, when we get so caught up in adult debates over ideologies, we sometimes forget to ask the most important questions. How is this actually affecting the children? But before we dive in, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe, and save this video. This is exactly the kind of conversation we need to be having more of. Evidence-based, child-focused discussions that go beyond the noise. Let's get into it. So here's what's happening in schools across the United States right now. As DEI initiatives are being reevaluated, restructured, or eliminated completely, we're starting to see some consequences that are particularly impacting neurodivergent students and children with physical differences who require additional scaffolding and support. And I want to be crystal clear about something. I'm not suggesting that anyone is intentionally trying to harm these children. Most of the people making these decisions genuinely believe they're doing what's best for education. But the fact of the matter is that good intentions don't always translate to good outcomes for every child. And that's what we need to examine. Let me share some research that's emerging. According to a March 2024 report from K-12 Dive, special education advocates are tracking what they are calling chilling effects on inclusive education programs. The report documents a concerning trend where programs that support neurodivergent students are being caught up in broader anti-DEI efforts, even though these programs are actually protected by federal law under IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. And this is about the time I think things get complicated and why we need to think really carefully about this. Some schools are becoming hesitant to use terms like inclusive education or accommodations because they're worried these might be perceived as DEI initiatives. But here's the thing, these aren't DEI initiatives. These are federally mandated civil rights protections that have existed for decades in this country, well, in the United States. The research is showing us some specific areas where children are being affected. First, we're seeing changes in how schools approach individualized support. Some districts are pulling back from what they call differentiated instruction because they're concerned it might be seen as giving certain students unfair advantages. But for a child with autism who needs sensory breaks or a student with ADHD who benefits from movement breaks, this isn't preferential treatment at all. It's necessary accommodation. Second, and this one really concerns me, we're seeing funding and resource allocation changes. Now, special education funding is complex and comes from multiple sources, but about $15 billion annually comes from federal IDEA funding. When schools restructure their approach to diversity and inclusion programs, sometimes these resources that supported comprehensive approaches to different learning needs get caught up in the crossfire. Here's a specific example that illustrates the complexity. According to documentation from disability rights advocates, some districts have eliminated specialized support positions that were created under DEI umbrellas. When those umbrellas were removed, the positions went with them, even though the students they served still needed support. This creates situations where students with autism who were successfully included in general education classrooms suddenly lose their dedicated support systems, not because the support wasn't needed. And here's where I think we need to step back and focus on what actually works for children. The research consistently shows that neurodivergent students benefit most from individualized approaches. They need support that's tailored to their specific neurological differences, not support that's based on fitting them into broader demographic categories. A landmark study published in the Journal of Special Education Needs found that when schools focus on specific, individualized accommodations rather than broad inclusion philosophies, student outcomes improve dramatically. We're talking about 40% better graduation rates and 60% better post-secondary success for students who receive truly individualized support. But, and this is a big but, that same research shows that students do best when they're included in general education environments with appropriate support. It's not either or, it's both and. They need individualized accommodations and inclusive environments. Let me share what the research tells us about what these students actually need, regardless of what we call the programs that provide it. They need environments where their neurological differences are understood and accommodated. They need teachers who are trained to recognize and support different learning needs and styles. They need individualized education plans that are actually individualized. And they need to be included in general education settings with appropriate support. Speaking of support, if you're a parent looking for practical ways to help your child's development at home while navigating these broader system challenges, definitely check out Munamind.com. We've got evidence-based activities and strategies that can complement whatever support your child is or isn't getting at school. I'll leave the link in the description box below. So again, these aren't DEI issues. These are basic human rights issues. These are civil rights issues. These are every child deserves to learn issues. We're having heated debates about adult political frameworks while children are sitting in classrooms right now not getting the support they need. We're arguing about ideology while kids with dyslexia aren't getting the reading support that could change their entire academic trajectory. We're debating policy while students with autism are being excluded from activities they could participate in with minimal accommodation. I think we need to flip the script here. Instead of asking whether supporting neurodivergent students fits into our preferred political framework, we should be asking, what do these children need to succeed, and how do we provide it? The answer to that question is actually pretty clear from the research. They need individualized support that recognizes their unique neurological makeup. They need inclusive environments where they can learn alongside their peers. They need teachers who understand that different doesn't mean deficient. And they need systems that prioritize their individual needs over administrative convenience. None of this is politically controversial. None of this threatens anyone else's opportunities. Supporting a child with autism doesn't take anything away from neurotypical children. In fact, research shows it benefits everyone by creating more inclusive, understanding environments. So here's my take, at least what I think needs to happen, and why I believe people across the political spectrum should be able to agree on this. We need to separate the politics from the children. We need policies that focus on individual student needs rather than group categories. We need funding that follows the child and their specific requirements. And we need to stop treating accommodations for neurodivergent students like they're optional extras, rather than necessary tools for accessing education. Here's my challenge to everyone watching this: parents, educators, policymakers. The next time you hear discussions about education policy, ask one simple question: how will this affect the most vulnerable students in our schools? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Not our political preferences, not our ideological frameworks, not our adult debates about equity and fairness. What matters is whether every child, every single child, has the opportunity to reach their full potential. The research is clear, the legal protections exist, and the moral imperative is obvious. Children with neurological differences deserve individualized support, inclusive environments, and the same opportunities for success as their peers. Whatever we call the programs that give this support, whatever political framework we use to organize our thinking about it, that fundamental truth remains unchanged. These children's futures shouldn't be held hostage to adult political debates. Their rights shouldn't fluctuate based on election outcomes. Their support shouldn't disappear because of ideological concerns. They deserve better from all of us. And that brings us to the end of today's video. If this made you think differently about how policy changes affect real children's lives, please hit that subscribe button. I'm trying to build a community of people who put children's welfare ahead of political convenience, and I'd love to have you be part of that conversation. What are your thoughts? Have you seen changes in your local schools that are affecting students with different learning needs? Drop a comment and let me know. I read every single one, and your insights often shape future videos. Real stories from real families help us understand how these big policy discussions play out in individual children's lives. Until then, keep fighting for children's rights, keep asking the hard questions, and remember, every child deserves to thrive. I'll see you in the next one.